Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And we're back.
Yes, 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 yes. Even even with a few technical difficulties,
And
we
I
got
am
here.
in I am in Pasadena, Texas. Shannon's at home. I'm in a motel room. And here we are, ready to serve.
So sorry that we were a couple minutes late, but so how hot is it there?
Oh, it's actually kind of humid. I'm right on the coast, right at the Gulf of America, which is weird. But that's what they call it
I'm
now.
not gonna call it that. Not gonna do it.
So it's been like in the mid to high 70s, I
Hmm.
guess. Pretty
Yeah,
windy.
it's 90 here.
Nice.
So
Mm.
so anyway, I had a lovely morning with just a wonderful group of ladies that our paths have brought us together. And so we had brunch at a place in Tempe, and so it was fun to get to see some of them that we haven't seen in a while, and others that we've only been online and seen each other. So it's nice to have it. Um, it was nice to be able to connect faces and names as well as catch up with other folks.
Nice.
So, all right. Well, are you ready to go, Johnny? I'm ready to
I am.
go.
I'm
Okay.
ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Okay. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
So, so as always, welcome to Deservingly You. This is a space where we talk honestly about what it takes to rebuild after those systems of control and rediscover how to live our lives in a self-led way. I'm Shannon Avery Briggs. I'm a certified transformational resilience coach and co-founder of Luminous Connections. And tonight we're going to be continuing a conversation that has been unfolding through lots of conversations with people who've navigated life after high controlled environments. Because when somebody leaves that a system like that, the outside world often will assume the story that and assume that it's finished. And here you've left, you're free, life moves on. But here, when you've gone through it, we've seen, and a lot of people experience that too, that the leaving isn't the end of the story. It's actually the beginning of us rebuilding our lives and rebuilding that identity and the confidence. And ultimately, it really comes down to rebuilding that ability to trust our own thinking, either again or even for the first time.
All right. I'm John Briggs, and thank you for being here again. Appreciate it. I'm also a transformational resilience coach, co-founder of Luminous Connections. And for me, one of the biggest surprises after leaving was realizing how many parts of everyday life had to be relearned. You know, to come to terms with that. Most things that most people just take for granted. You know, um, Making decisions without looking over your shoulder, trusting your own instincts. Again, or for the first time, perhaps. Finding your footing where or when the structure that wants to find your life is no longer in place. If that makes sense. That didn't happen overnight either. That process. It unfolded slowly through reflection and through honest conversations and a whole lot of uh, small steps towards stability.
Yep. So tonight we're going to introduce something really important before somebody can actually navigate that larger exit paths roadmap. We touched on that a little bit last week. And before they build that next chapter of their life, there's that foundation that has to be rebuilt. And this foundation is what we call value. And value stands for vulnerability, authenticity, self love, understanding that you're deserving, and empowerment. Now, these 5 elements form that first step in moving from surviving to rebuilding. So if you're here live, type live in the chat for us. And if by chance you're watching the replay, please let us know and type replay. We want to see the messages from you. We want to see if this is landing and if it's relating and if it's helpful. So we want to know that you're here. And if conversations like this matter to you, please tap like and subscribe, as well as the little bell, so that you're notified when something comes up. And because we want to be able to help this, so many of us that have left really care about helping other people who are going through this. And so it's things like that where you're sharing and liking that can help get out to the right people and help them to be able to have a life that's worth living to them as well. So let's dive in, shall we?
Indeed.
So as always, before we want to set the norms, so this helps us to keep this space to be respectful as well as focused. So you can share, feel free to share at your own pace, and also listening quietly is okay. Also, we want to encourage you to speak from your own experience, using those I statements rather than being generalizing about other people. We also want to stay on topic. This conversation is about vulnerability and rebuilding after those high control systems. So if comments move into debates or criticisms of either individuals or an organization, we're gonna guide that. We're gonna redirect it so that we can stay back on topic. And then fourth, please practice respect and curiosity. There's we also want to protect the energy of the space. So thoughtful comments help people to participate. So we hold these norms so that the conversation can stay safe, meaningful, and productive and move forward.
Yeah. And, these norms, they help create a safe space, where people can be honest with themselves again. And that's one of the most important parts of rebuilding and moving forward.
Yep. So one of the questions that we hear most often from people who leave those high controlled systems is, what happens now? So for many people, leaving brings that sense of relief, but that relief is often mixed with confusion. And if you finally have freedom, but then that freedom can come with uncertainty. And we were actually having a conversation earlier today with somebody that was talking about this exact point. Because once that structure that once defined your life is gone, something else becomes clear. We know that life needs to be rebuilt. And what that means is your identity, your confidence, your ability to trust your own thinking again. So somewhere in that process, people begin asking that deeper question of, where in the world do I even begin?
Yeah. I remember that moment pretty clearly. There was relief, yes, but there was also this realization that a lot of things I thought that I understood about life had to be relearned. Simple things, making decisions without looking over my shoulder, trusting my instincts, making decisions without, or trying to figure out who I was when I no longer living inside someone else's structure, and just that and it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
At times,
Yeah, that was actually what this person earlier today had been sharing about, how she did feel really overwhelmed, and it was really difficult for her to have that clarity and even really know where to start. And so this it's so interesting that this topic we're covering this tonight, because that question, where do I start, is the reason that we're having that conversation tonight. Because rebuilding after control doesn't start with fixing everything at once. We have to start rebuilding that foundation inside yourself. And when we were talking earlier, we had one of the things that she had talked about doing was like looking outside of herself for guidance instead of really learning how to listen to herself. And so that it was really hard for her to even know what she should be able to trust, because she hasn't gotten there yet, which is okay. You know, we all go through that confusing time.
Yeah.
So as John and I started having more conversations with people that were leaving high control systems, we noticed patterns. That's kind of what we do. We notice patterns, and people genuinely want to move forward and they want to build their lives. But a lot of times they feel unsure where to begin. And when we looked closer, we started seeing several common experiences. And the first one was that identity disruption, when that system that shaped you, as well as how you thought, what you believed, who you can be and where you're supposed to be, stepping away can actually create that moment where you ask yourself, who am I now? And then another pattern that we saw was what we're calling here is that self-trust collapse. Now, most people were trained for years to look outside of themselves for the right answers. Like I was saying, I was having this conversation this morning. It's so fascinating that we're talking about it tonight. So when that structure ends up disappearing, learning how to trust your own thinking can really, really feel uncertain.
Yeah. And there's another piece too that many people may underestimate, and that's the loss of community. Right? Leaving often means stepping away from relationships, routines, and people who once felt like their entire world, right? Family and friends, their own kids even, and that loss alone can be incredibly disorienting, and just kind of just throw everything off track. And when all these things happen at once, people often experience what's called emotional whiplash. Okay, you might feel relief one moment, and then grief the next, hope one day, and then confusion the next. It's just it's just a lot for anyone to process.
Yeah, you can imagine, and that seems like it's on the opposite sides of the scale, right? Hope, confusion, grief. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
So when we saw these patterns appearing again and again, we thought of something really important, that first step in rebuilding after control isn't an external thing. It's internal, which is like counterintuitive compared to what we experienced when we were in there. We always looked for the answers outside of ourselves, but to build that foundation, it's we need to learn how to look internally. So as we started noticing these patterns in people that were leaving the high controlled environments, something really came clear. That first step in rebuilding, like we said, isn't external, it's internal. And many people naturally try to rebuild by changing the things that are around them. They may do a new direction, a new environment. They may try, for example, try a new church or find different groups to join and stuff like that, those new goals. But if that internal foundation hasn't been rebuilt yet, then those changes actually can make us feel unstable. So then we started asking a different question. What actually helps somebody to rebuild their internal foundation? And I looked back, we've had, I think we've shared this before, that people have asked us, how are you so resilient? So John and I started looking into it, and that's where this framework that we're going to be covering tonight, value, comes in. It's the framework that we use to describe that first step in rebuilding. Like I said earlier, the vulnerability, authenticity, self-love, understanding that you are deserving, and empowerment. Now, these 5 elements can help people reconnect with themselves after years of being shaped by systems of control. It is one of the exact same things that the journey that I went through, not only going through the domestic violence, but also with the cancer. And it helped me to be able to move forward.
And when people begin strengthening these areas inside themselves, something very powerful begins to take place. They begin trusting themselves again. Their thinking becomes clearer. Their decisions become stronger. And slowly they begin building a life that actually reflects who they're becoming or who they are.
Yeah. I have my necklace on tonight that it's engraved with one of my favorite phrases, which it says, "Deserving, become who you are." And so, like I said, this was one of those. This was part of my journey that helped me to be able to get to where I am today. And it's also why we decided, to look at this, because value is a great starting point. Before rebuilding the life around you, you start looking and rebuilding that foundation that's within you. So the first step in this value framework is vulnerability. And vulnerability begins when you accept where you truly are. It also is about really, really opening up your heart to yourself. And for many people that have left the high controlled environments, there's that moment where the world that they left suddenly cracks. And what kind of came to me with this idea was like having that snow globe, that perfect life that's within that's protected from everything, and it cracks and it breaks. The life that you believed was stable gets broken and shaken. And then suddenly you begin to realize that parts of the story that you were living may not have been fully yours. And that moment can be incredibly disorienting. And vulnerability also means facing what was lost, experiences that you didn't get to have, and years that you might wish that had been different, choices that you made that were based on the information that you trusted at that time. Now, those realizations, when we hit those, and I've heard it in a lot of the conversations with some of the people that are out, it's really painful, and it can bring up anger as well. But healing doesn't begin by avoiding those feelings and that the truth around this. It actually can begin when we stop running from what we already know. And when we allow ourselves to look honestly at our story, that honesty is not a weakness. It's that first act of rebuilding.
Yeah. And, vulnerability doesn't mean living in the past either. It means acknowledging reality so you can move forward. Right? If that makes sense. And sometimes the most powerful thing that someone can do is just name one truth about where they're at today, right now. And then choose one small step forward, from that reality and that truth.
Yep. Now, one of the things with when you look at the research into trauma recovery, it actually shows, and John's talked about this some in some past episodes too. When we name the reality, it actually can help us to reduce that emotional overwhelm. So when we learn to say something like, "This is where I am," our brain actually can shift from that avoidance into processing. And processing is what helps us to do that healing and makes it possible. And that's why vulnerability, it has to be first. It has to come first. We have to be willing to open ourselves up to where we are, as well as where we're standing. And one of the I was sharing last night on Linda's show, that one of the first things that the cancer doctor had said to me was, look at your feet, and that your feet have brought you exactly where you're standing today. And I had to be willing to look at that and realize that there was some things that I had done in my life that created that perfect storm. And so I had to be vulnerable enough to be able to ask those questions and to look at that. So then the next step, what's that?
I was going to say, I've often called that name it to tame it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. So the next step in our framework, the value framework, is authenticity. And this one was really, when I peeled this back and really thought about it, I was like, wow, how many times it comes back to being honest with yourself. So often it means learning to live in alignment with who you truly are. And many people that have left those high controlled environments, this one can be one of the most challenging steps. Any guesses to why? So, authenticity often requires letting go of the roles that we spent years trying to perform. And many of us were taught exactly who we were supposed to be, what we should believe, what kind of person we were expected to become. And so authenticity begins when we start removing those masks where we learn to wear to meet those expectations. And I remember realizing this in my own journey. I even remember exactly where I was. I was on the corner in Renton on my way walking into work. And there, for a while, I had this really cool hairstyle. It was a hairstyle that the organization, or some of the people in the organization, didn't like and wouldn't work with me or anything like that. But other people, they would notice me on the street and they would tell me how much I loved it. All walks of life, adults, children, just everybody just always loved it. And then one day I was walking, like I said, I was walking into work and something clicked inside of me. I realized that if people were looking and paying attention to so much, looking at my hair and going, oh, it's so cool, it was like they weren't seeing me. They weren't looking at me. And so in a sense, my hairstyle, my cool hairstyle had become my mask. And it gave people something to notice, so I didn't have to show them anything deeper. And at that time, I was trying so hard to play those certain roles, the perfect wife, the perfect coworker, the perfect mother, and trying to meet those expectations that didn't actually belong. It was like not that I didn't want to be a good wife or a mother, but the perfect one. And so those expectations didn't belong to me. And the more that I tried to live up to those roles, the more disconnected I became with myself. And so the moment that I started allowing to live with more authenticity, something really, really powerful happened. And I ended up feeling a strength that I hadn't felt in many, many years.
And that's something that we see in some individuals over and over again, is when they stop performing for expectations and start living in alignment with who they are, their confidence begins returning. Okay. And their voices become clear. Their life begins reflecting their values instead of somebody else's rules and expectations.
Yep. And so in order to do this, we have to be curious about ourselves. We have to figure out, because there's so many, I've heard this from many, many too, is like, I don't know what I like. I don't know what I should or shouldn't allow myself to do. So we have to become curious with ourselves. So I want to have you think about, and you can reflect on this, are your daily actions aligned with your true self? And if you don't know if they are or not, are you getting curious enough about yourself to be able to choose the daily actions that, be curious about it? And if you don't know, what's one small way that you could live more authentically with yourself today? And being able to be this, do this, and step into who we are. I was able to have the conversation with my family when I did leave that was authentically me. And so the more that you live authentically, the stronger that you become. And that power can come from embracing who you truly are. And we've talked about our nervous systems and stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, Johnny?
About the nervous system?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. So when I know that research on identity recovery is after high controlled environments shows that authenticity is strongly tied to just that, your nervous system and how it's regulated. When someone stops performing, roles that don't match their internal identity, the brain experiences less internal conflict. Okay. And which increases confidence and emotional stability. And that's why authenticity follows vulnerability in our value framework in that sequence.
Yeah. And an example of this that I that comes to immediately to mind are those that have ended up coming out as gay when after they leave the organization. You can almost see it in the way that they are and how they don't have that mask on anymore. They can actually be who truly they are. And you can see that perfectly, that they don't have as much of that internal conflict.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I've met a few. We have, since we've been out, and and I can tell I can tell by just how they engage, that they're truly able to be who they are, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So our next step in this framework is self-love. And for many people, this may be one of the hardest steps in the entire journey, because many of us were never taught how to treat ourselves with compassion. And we hear this a lot too, anytime that we get together with people who have come out. It's hard for them because we were like the good for nothing slaves, right? But one of the things that we have to recognize is that self-love is not selfish. And this isn't about putting ourselves above other people either. It means that you learn how to speak to yourself with that same kindness and love that you would offer somebody else that you deeply care about. But then people that are leaving high control systems carry that powerful inner critic. It's like on high. It's like doped up on some of those monster drinks. That inner critic is like, ah. And so that voice that we hear inside of ourselves, it quickly will turn to blame. And it'll tell you stupid things like, you should have known better. You failed. You're not strong enough. So I know that I lived with that voice for a really long time. And whenever something went wrong, I immediately had assumed it was my fault. Even like, I remember through the cancer journey, there was one time where somebody had gotten some information and it spread through the whole clinic. And I took the responsibility. I'd assumed it was my fault, even though I had nothing to do with it. And it took a lot it was during that I really learned about guilt and being able to let it go and how worthless it is. But I had for years felt like I wasn't good enough and that I wasn't worthy of love or happiness. But when I began allowing that practice of self-compassion, something changed. I realized that I also deserve kindness and care, just like everybody else. Realizing that began that opening space for additional healing, because self-love, like I mentioned before about the guilt, it's also with shame. It helps us to release that guilt and shame, and reminds us that we're doing the best that we can, and we did the best that we could with what we had at the time.
Yeah. And when people start replacing self-criticism with compassion, something very powerful begins to take place. You know, the nervous system settles, the pressure lifts, because growth doesn't happen in environments of shame. Okay, it happens in environments of care.
I want you to really think about that, because this is what, like, coming out of these environments is like. It is about growth. And so what John said, growth doesn't happen in environments of shame. It actually happens in environments of care. And so I'd be curious if that was a new thought for you guys. So I also want to take a moment together. You can take a slow breath and think of one kind sentence that you could say to yourself today. And it can be something that, like, I'm doing my best. I'm allowed to heal. I deserve care. Here's the thing with saying those types of things, because we can say it, and we can say it really shallow, but it's like, I want you to take it in and actually feel it. Let them land. Let the words land. Because when we begin loving ourselves with compassion, we actually create that space for healing and growth. And self-love becomes a foundation for resilience.
Yeah. One of my favorites there is, I'm doing my best. I tell myself that all the time. And I don't have to match anybody else's abilities.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm here in Texas for the orientation class and training. And I'm not top of the class.
You're not?
No, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
And then that's a passing grade. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things with self-compassion too, there was a psychologist that did some research. Her name was Kristen Neff, and that research showed that self-kindness increases resilience and motivation more than self-criticism does. Self-kindness can increase that resilience. So when people replace that shame with compassion, they're more likely to grow than not. And so that's why we also added, it was really important to have that self-love in this framework as well. I deserve to care for myself. How does that make you feel, Linda? I'm curious. Is it hard to say? Does it come pretty easy when you say that? I think I talked about it a little bit last week too, that I didn't believe anything initially. And so I had to borrow, in a sense, I had to borrow the belief from my counselor. And before I could really, really start being comfortable with saying those types of things to myself.
And just so everybody knows, I can't see comments from my end here at this time, so I can't comment on them or welcome you. I don't even know who's here or not.
Next time we'll have to experiment with putting them on the stage. So the next step is one of my favorites. I love my deservingness, and so it's understanding that something can completely change your life, and that's understanding deservingness. Oh, Linda says that it's easier to say that I deserve to care for myself. It's easier to say now than it was in the past. So that's a sign of growth for sure.
Oh, definitely. I love that.
Yes. And so like I said, understanding deservingness and understanding that you're deserving of healing. And this is really, this was a huge, huge, huge growth piece. I talked a little bit about it last night on Linda's show, when it's like you realize you deserve help. And so with us coming out of this environment, we are deserving of happiness. We are deserving of being able to have a life that is ours and it isn't directed by other people, and deserving of building that life that is one that reflects who you truly are and just brings your talents to life. And many people carry a quiet belief that good things are just meant for other people and not for them. They believe that healing is only possible for somebody else, and that success is possible for somebody else, but somehow it's not for them. And for years and years, I believed that too. And that was part of what held me back in my health journey. So if something went wrong, I took it as proof that I wasn't worth anything. I wasn't worthy of anything good. And that belief kept me stuck for a long time. And here's the other thing too, is that this shift doesn't happen overnight. But there have been moments in my life that changed and helped me to see myself differently. In a sense, I was held up a mirror, and something that this was kind of like, this is a little bit of the story that I told last night, where my doctor had said, you believe you deserve to be sick. You don't realize that you deserve help. And that moment really stopped me, because I realized that I'd been living as if healing was meant for other people, not for me. And so once I began understanding that I deserved healing, something inside of me really began to change. And I started allowing the help. I remember John put on car washes, to help pay for the treatments that I was doing. And that was so uncomfortable for me, to be able to let people work that hard for me, and to help us raise money to help pay for my care. I finally started believing change might be possible, and my life began shifting into a new direction, and I'm a totally different person than what I was, 10 years ago.
Yeah. And that's the power of believing that, and that you deserve help, and believing it, like I said. And when someone believes that they deserve healing, they start to make different choices. They allow support, they allow growth, and they allow themselves to imagine a future again, or maybe for the first time.
Yeah, true. So here's an idea for you guys to reflect on. So Linda said, understanding that I'm deserving of healing and growth. And that's amazing. I don't know if you're referring to my story, but it was amazing, and it shifted my life. It totally changed my whole entire life. One word, in a sense, one word changed my life. So like I said, here's something I want to invite you to reflect on. Is there something in your life that you've quietly told yourself that you still can't have? Do you believe that you don't deserve it? And if that belief didn't start with you, here's a key piece. If that belief didn't start with you, where did it come from? Because healing, empowerment, and growth are not reserved for other people. You deserve that as well. And when you begin believing that, your life begins moving in that new and right direction.
I want to comment on that from a personal aspect, because in hindsight, I didn't believe I deserved anything good in my entire life, or most of my life, and I would sabotage things. I didn't do it on purpose, but like I said, in hindsight, I look back and it was because I didn't believe I deserved to be loved. I wasn't worthy of a healthy relationship, and I would try to sabotage, or I did sabotage many good things in my life because I didn't believe I deserved them.
Yeah, he did everything he could to destroy our relationship. Well, not everything, but he did a lot. He did a lot to do that. But
I remember being shocked that it was never enough.
What do you mean it was never enough?
Well, you finally said I've had enough, but I mean, up till then,
Yeah.
I kept trying. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that around research with in psychology, it shows that deservingness beliefs. Sorry about that. Deservingness beliefs strongly influence our life outcomes. So people who unconsciously believe that they do not deserve success often, like John was just saying, they'll self-sabotage those opportunities without even realizing it. And so the moment that they change their internal belief about what they deserve, their decision-making patterns begin changing almost immediately. So the way that you're even making your decisions. But you got to feel it. You got to experience it. Now, our final piece of the value framework is empowerment. And empowerment, this is another one of my favorites. It's like each one of this framework, I think my favorites are probably the self-love, the understanding, deserving, and the empowerment. Empowerment is where healing turns into action. Here's where we recognize that there's something that's incredibly important. We may not control everything that happens to us, but we always have the power to decide how we're going to respond. And there was that moment in my life when I realized I couldn't keep waiting for somebody else to save me. I had to take responsibility for my own healing. And it was around that time that I met this woman named Marcy. It was through the domestic violence time frame. And Marcy had survived 3 abusive marriages. The 3rd marriage almost killed her. The husband that she had at the time slit her throat, and she wore a scarf every day to cover the scar, the huge scar that was on her neck. And meeting her left such a deep impression on me, because despite everything that she had been through, she still moved forward. And at that moment, it changed how I saw my own life, because I knew coming out of the relationship that I was in, I did not and I would not stay trapped in that role of victim. And I also gained a new perspective in regards to survivor. I didn't want to just simply be a survivor. I wanted to be a healthy survivor, somebody who actively builds a life beyond what had happened. And I knew that I didn't want to get sucked back into some of these things. And so it meant that I had to stop waiting for circumstances to change and start changing what I could. And this was also one of those lessons that I took forward with me in regards to the cancer journey. At one point, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I was telling her how I needed my doctor said, you got to take responsibility for the fact that your body is presenting cancer. But I'd also experienced abuse from my father. And so this person I was having the conversation with was like, oh, no, you don't need to take responsibility for the cancer. But then when we switched over to the abuse from my father, it's like, well, you were a challenging child. So she expected me to take responsibility for the fact that I'd been abused, but did not want me to take responsibility for the fact that my body had presented cancer. So it was like she had it switched. She had it backwards. So when I stepped into this empowerment by taking responsibility, I made different choices. I had things were different with my direction as well as my healing.
And that's where real empowerment begins, right? When people stop waiting for permission to begin taking ownership of what's next. The past may explain the pain, but it doesn't have to define the future and who they're becoming.
I think I've seen you do this. I saw this with you taking a stand in a lot of different areas in your life. So even like with coming out of prison, and choosing to take some of the steps that you did with that, so that you could have a better life. And you also, when you taking the stand that you did with the drugs and alcohol, there were some things that I would like kind of challenge you on, but you ultimately had to take on the responsibility. So the one that comes to mind for like when you got out, I was actually talking to somebody about it this afternoon, when you got out of treatment and you told me that you were brain damaged.
Right. I believe that. And you wouldn't let me hold on to it. I used it as a crutch, and an excuse to fall back on, and I didn't even realize it at the time. But I was able to heal from that. I was still very toxic at that time, but once I came out of that fog, I didn't allow myself to continue down that road.
Yeah. So taking the responsibility,
Yeah.
the responsibility for the fact that I went through this, but I'm not going to use that as a crutch.
Right. Absolutely.
So I want to invite you guys to think about this. What's one area of your life where you could take responsibility for creating positive change? And what's one small action that you could take this week? One of the things that we've learned in the journey that John and I have taken is we've seen how empowerment grows every time that we move forward. And so the strength to transform your life is already inside you. So when you take responsibility and act on it, that strength becomes real.
Yeah. And there's 3 stages that people go through that studies on trauma recovery. They show that people can heal the fastest when moving through these. And the one being understanding what actually happened and rebuilding their identity in the process and moving forward, and then reclaiming their personal agency. And the value framework follows that same pattern naturally, which is why it resonates so well and strongly with some people leaving high control environments.
Yeah. Would you guys agree, now that you guys have gone through the value framework that we've reviewed it, would you agree that this, does it resonate? So as tonight we kind of start bringing this down, and I want to pause and look at what we've just walked through. So value is about preparing ourselves to rebuild our life and recognizing that healing, believe it or not, this will probably surprise you, but it's not the end of the story. Healing is actually the beginning of transformation, and each part of this framework plays a really important role. Now, vulnerability allows you to face the truth about where you are today. And authenticity helps you to reconnect with your real voice. Self-love replaces that harsh judgment that we'll put on ourselves with compassion. Understanding deservedness reminds you that healing and growth belongs to you as well. And empowerment is where you begin taking the action and building a future that reflects who you truly are.
And one thing that we've learned along our own journey and from other people as well is that this doesn't happen overnight. It happens just one small step at a time, but also realizing that every step forward matters.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be one step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, yeah.
I love this. So Linda says, I haven't sang in quite a while. So this week I will choose a song to do some rehearsal to strengthen my singing voice. I love that. Especially if you love singing. If you don't like singing, yeah, but if you love singing, yes, definitely. So the moment that somebody begins believing that they deserve healing, something powerful begins shifting. Like we talked about earlier, you're going to start making different choices. And you're going to start seeing a future, whether it's something totally new, a totally new experience, or whether you're able to imagine it again. And you start building that life that reflects who you truly are. Now, if this conversation is meaningful to you, I want to take a moment to encourage you guys to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that. It definitely helps the conversations to reach the people who may still be searching for answers. And we also want to build a community of people that are rebuilding their lives with strength and clarity, because nobody should have to navigate this journey alone.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the overall the thought about this overall process, John?
Well, I know that research on recovery shows that many people that are rebuilding their identity most effectively, they come along most effectively when they understand the process that they're moving through. And that takes some work and awareness and an open mind, but the frameworks like value, they give the brain structure and direction. Okay. And which it reduces the overwhelm, and it just increases the ability to follow through with what they're working on. And that's why the audience responds so well to these step-based frameworks.
Yeah.
But it does take work.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
So this is our time in the show where we open it up to you guys, because when we talk about rebuilding identity and healing, you might see something and recognize something in your own journey. So you'll see the questions on the screen while I look for the invite. I'm getting the hang of this. So if by chance anybody would like to come up, if it's spinning, so hopefully. And if not, that's okay too. So a couple of the questions: what truth about your life became clearer today? And where are you learning to be more honest with yourself? That was a huge one for me, to actually be truly honest with myself. And was there any parts of this framework that, number one, resonated with you and that might have felt more challenging to you right now? I'm not sure where Johnny went.
I'm here. Okay.
Oh, here's Linda. I'm going to add her to the stage.
Okay.
Hey, Linda.
Okay, my mic is on now.
Yeah, it's on now.
I'm all talking with the mic muted because, it's my first time ever doing this.
That's what I thought.
It's like, I'm new here. And I tend to do this all the time with the mic off. So, yeah, the things you've put together is I'm in awe, actually. I'm just in awe because I would not have thought of them on my own, and to see them in the what are these things called when you show each picture? Are they called slides or?
Yeah.
Okay, to see the pictures and everything with the words, it's inspiring to me, and it's stuff I had not thought of yet. So it helps me have the vision for it.
Awesome.
So that's something I'm not used to. So yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, to hear you say that really inspires us to continue.
Good.
Just raise awareness, because once somebody becomes aware of something, that's when you're able to act on it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
These new concepts that you're bringing to the table are just really amazing to me. Thank you. I mean, I'm just without words right now. I'm just going, wow, that could happen. Wow. That's an option. Oh, okay. So thank you.
That's amazing to me too. And it's like, thank you for having us on your channel last night. We either hit 79 or 80 today. I can't remember. So that's like very humbling to us as well, that, hopefully there's 80 people that we're at least 80 people that we're able to help.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I've noticed, John, that you like daily make these little videos of inspiration and challenge people on the way that they think. And I just want to name your page Shift Happens. Shit happens. That's like you're promoting shift. You're promoting people to shift in whatever area they can, and you present a different perspective. So shift happens. Yeah, that's what I think of when I listen to the things you put out there.
Oh, thank you. That's my goal. Appreciate that.
And I'm trying to. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, please share all, our channel and those little snippets of videos that we put out.
Okay.
Whoever you might think needs it.
Yeah, I'm trying to do more too, but being as sick as I was the last couple of weeks, I was like, I just need to get some rest.
Yes, absolutely. And the pictures that you have that on your page, it's a different demeanor than what John does, and I like what yours are as well. You're holding a cup of coffee or tea. It represents peace. of mind and centeredness and groundedness when I see these pictures. And sometimes they'll have words to the picture with you there too as well. Or sometimes I'll see the picture and kind of roll past it and something starts talking, you know. So I'm enjoying those as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We're trying. We're trying to get out there and encourage people because we've been there. Know what it's like for sure.
When you said just a few minutes ago, nobody deserves to go through this alone. Many of us, like I left 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was very much alone. I was very much alone in this. What to do next kind of thing. And so the process today of healing can be so much quicker than it was for me. You know, back in the day, you know, I remember there was just a few different people out there that were doing stuff like this, supporting people and leaving and in their healing. And at that time, what was determined to make it, to define a toxic group or a cult had to do with the doctrines that were being taught, rather than the techniques and tactics that are used, and to then find yourself in a better mindset so that you have a better sense of footage that you could stand on your own. Yeah. Whereas when we're in an abusive relationship or an abusive group, we have this dependency that we won't be able to survive without them. And in case we haven't figured that out, they're going to tell us this a lot, you know? So to have that sense of we might actually have what it takes to make things happen is pretty big.
It was amazing and we know that we say over and over, it was because of the personal development work that we had done prior to waking up, because we were working on other things prior to that. And so when we did end up waking up, that helped so much. So a lot of the thing, I mean, we still had to go through it, but it, like you said, it helped us to go through. And we have had people over and over and over say, I can't believe that you've only been out. What are we out 2 years now? Almost 2 years.
Jeez, I mean, probably closer to a year and a half. On the other side of a year and a half, I think it'll be 2 years in June.
Yeah.
I think you were just starting that journey in June of 2024.
Yeah. And so people are like so shocked that we haven't been out for that long, but they could even tell by the way that we talked and stuff that we weren't having the same experiences that other people were. And a lot of it had to do with like doing this internal work that we'd been doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, and that would be for any kind of shifting in life. And to hear that even last night when I was able to have you guys on the show, to hear about what was going on with John and what was going on with you, the challenges that you two were being faced with, supported this self-reflection for the work to start, or to continue even more, or to stick with it. And if you dropped it, you still got back on. And so that's the kind of work that we usually don't find ourselves being drawn towards until we leave the organization and ask ourselves, who am I? Where am I? You know, so that did start before you left the org. And that's kind of ass backwards, but it's ass backwards from what I've seen as the norm. Yeah. And that's what a benefit that equipped you for the journey of making a choice of how you wanted things to look.
Yeah.
And the fact that both of you, you know, being both believers and leaving, because sometimes one of the partners will stay, and it can get bad. It can get ugly.
Yeah. Well,
when that happens.
Yeah. Fortunately, John had patience.
Nice. That's very nice.
So it was almost like, in some ways, it was like when he was coming out of the addiction, I was like really patient with him. And then when I was coming out of the org, he was very patient with me.
I tend to think of the indoctrination we were under as being very similar to under the influence of other things that we can become addicted to.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people come out too, they end up replacing it, because I remember that feeling too when I first got out of the domestic violence situation.
Yes.
Is I created chaos.
That's amazing.
I continued to create chaos because it was comfortable. It was what I was so normal. And so it took me quite a while to resettle my nervous system to where chaos wasn't the norm anymore, and that I could move on.
It's almost like, from what I'm hearing you say, it's almost like that wheel of abuse. You were actually creating that, because after you left the wheel of abuse and were having to experience it still in that relationship, after you left, it's as though you were addicted to the hormones released when you went through those stages, rather than the person who was abusive. So statistics say 7 to 9 times a spouse or partner will go back to their abusive partner. And so I kind of expect that to happen with those that leave the org. Sometimes they'll go back, and it's similar to going back to an abusive spouse. I believe that it's nobody wants to go back to get the crap beat out of them. I believe they're addicted to that hormones that get released on each stage of the power wheel.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you are addicted to, or me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certain chemicals are released in the brain. People get addicted to the adrenaline or whatever it is, and even if they don't go back to the same individual, they end up with the same person again, over and over again.
Right.
That pattern, the same type of person. Or they leave the org and they go to some other group that will abuse them or try to manipulate.
It's a common thing called cult hopping. Cult hopping, yeah. And for Shannon to recognize that she caused, what did you call it, chaos or drama?
Yeah, I created chaos.
Created chaos. Yeah. So to me, it was kind of an attempt to get those hormones to be released.
Yep.
On your own.
Yeah. I even remember, even like when that aha came to me, I remember exactly where I was standing when that became really clear. So I get it.
Wow.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, do you want to hear about what we're going to do next week?
I do.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take you off if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. So next week.
Thank you, Linda, for coming on, by the way. I appreciate you.
We love you so much. So next week we're going to start digging into the first stage of the exit generation journey of exit paths. Now, paths is another framework, and the episode for next week is titled When the Illusion Breaks. So like we said earlier today, many people that leave those high control systems can point to a moment. And we shared it last night. We shared that moment for us last night when something stopped making sense. And that story that you trust ends up beginning to crack. And that moment can feel really, really unsettling, but it also can be that beginning of seeing clearly for the first time. So next week we're gonna dive in and explore that moment and what it feels like when our questioning begins, and why it can feel both terrifying as well as freeing, and how that experience becomes that first step in rebuilding life after control.
Because when someone sees the illusion clearly, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to have that reversed back again to where it
Yeah.
once was. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember for me, it was like, I felt like I was in The Wizard of Oz and that curtain had been pulled back. And so it's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So
And then
definitely go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then the human tendency is just to keep looking, dig
Yeah.
deeper, and that's what we did, and everything just falls apart. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so if this resonates with you, please make sure that you're sharing it so that we can have more people in the conversation. We want them to have a life that is meant for them and that is theirs. And we are really looking forward to continuing this journey together. So this is something that we started doing the last probably maybe about the last month. We want to extend an invitation because rebuilding life after those high control systems isn't something that anybody should do alone, like we said. And so that we looked back and said, what can we do? How can we serve more? And especially it's like, it can be really nerve-wracking to come up on stage on YouTube. So we created the Exit Generation community. And this is a place where people can continue to have the conversations and share their experiences, and we can support each other as we rebuild our lives. And we focus, so there are a lot of XJW Facebook groups out there, and there are a lot of them that will do trauma bonding, and they'll be like bad mouthing the organization or elders, or even kind of getting stuck in where they're living. What we want to do is create a space where people can rebuild their lives. And so tomorrow we'll be hosting a live community discussion. We do this every Monday night at 4 p.m. Pacific time and 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to be exploring the questions that you see here on the slide. We always want to look at gratefulness because we want to bring that up in our bodies and be able to feel that. And also, where are you learning to become more honest with yourself and like really looking at yourself? And what part of your life are you beginning to live more authentically? Have you even thought about that? Have you thought about how far you've come? So, and the next question that we're going to be covering is, what's one way that you're practicing self-compassion in this season of your life? And what's one small step that you're ready to take in the next 24 hours? Now, Linda said this next week she's going to be practicing some singing. So I look forward to hearing more of that.
You know, these types of conversations, they often lead to very powerful breakthroughs because, you know, when people hear others talk about a similar journey, you know, something powerful happens. They realize that they're not alone in this. You know, I know that for me, for so long, I didn't even know there was such a large group of people experiencing similar trauma experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, it blew our minds when we were introduced, when we first came out and started connecting with some of the people that had left. We had no idea that this community was so large. So
we were told, we were always told to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Definitely. Yeah. So if this sounds helpful, we'd love to have you guys join us in this conversation. Linda's joined us a couple of times, and it happens, like we said, inside the Exit Generation Facebook. You can search for the group, or we'll have the link in the description and in the pinned comment, like what we've done in the past. And so we would love to have you join us there. So do you want to touch on this one? Do you want to touch on the quote today?
The quote is, when you know your value, you stop accepting anything that diminishes it. And I'm not sure where you got that. Well, it says unknown.
Yeah. And so hopefully it captures the heart of everything that we talked about today for you. You know, we talked about vulnerability. We talked about authenticity, self-love, understanding deservedness, and empowerment. Now, each of those steps can bring you closer to recognizing your true value. This was, and this framework that I shared with you, this was like my journey. This is what I went through. These were some of the lessons that I learned along my journey. And so sharing with it, and hopefully you can be inspired, and hopefully it can give you some things to work on so that you can become closer to who you were meant to be. Because when somebody truly understands their value, your life begins to change, and you stop shrinking, and you stop settling for a crappy life. Build something that is meant for you, and build something that's new.
So thank you for spending the time with us tonight. We truly appreciate you. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, share, pass this on if this resonates with you, or you know anybody that can value from it. And we're grateful that you're part of this conversation, you know, with us. And wherever you are on your journey right now, remember this: if you have value, you have value. Your healing matters, okay? And your future is still unfolding, you know, like it always is. Appreciate you, and we love each and every one of you.
Yeah. So thanks for being with us today. Every time we have these conversations, we're reminded that there are so many people that are quietly rebuilding their lives, and it takes real courage to begin that journey.
So whether today gave you a new insight, a new question, okay, or simply a moment of reflection, we're glad. We are absolutely delighted that you're a part of it.
So once again, thanks for spending some time with us. Your story is still unfolding, and so we look forward to continuing this journey together. So thanks, everybody.
Bye for now. See you next week.
Bye.